Hi, this is Dave.
And I'm Stu, and we're from the Signal of Doom.
We're proud members of the collective, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Yes, hello Loony listeners, this is episode 78 of Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. I am your host, High Priest of Khonshu Rey, and in this very issue, or episode, I keep on saying that, we have a special guest. He's no stranger to the show. He is Tommy, the man on the Streets Kawel. Tommy, welcome aboard on this episode.
Thank you, Ray. As always, very happy to be here.
Oh, it's always fun to have you on, Tommy, as well. And microseconds before we started, just wanted to thank you, Tommy. We are spanning the Atlantic or the Pacific, depending which way you're going. So Tommy is up bright and early for this. I'm heading into the night, no pun intended. But Tommy, really good to have you with us. And we've got a very special review. It's an ARC review, so I believe it is the Waxing Gibbous. Khonshu has told us we must do an ARC review, and it is on the Scarlet redemption for MARC SPECTOR Moon Knight. This should be an interesting issue, considering, you know, the 90s and what it gave us.
Yeah, and I mean, I know we'll get into it, but I really enjoyed these, 6 issues, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into that, just a little bit of idle chat. Tommy, I guess we are heading towards the silly season. Any big plans for the fam?
Not too much. I am really looking forward to just vegging out and relaxing a little bit. My school's going into exams this next week. Our semester's ending, so it's just been a crazy last couple weeks of the semester, and students are starting up bright and early Monday morning. So
yeah, how do you feel? Do you feel nervous for your students? Like, have you think you've set them on the right course? You know, are there a couple of stragglers that you're kind of sweating on?
I mean, you know how it goes. We'll see. I have faith that my students will perform, but. 3/5 of my population are freshmen, and this is their first time going into final exams, and so it's that first time is tough for a lot of kids. But I've got review sessions tonight, and we'll get them up to snuff. But otherwise, just kind of relaxing, hanging out with my 2 little boys and my wife, and hopefully getting some reading in, because I've actually had to keep my comics on the shelf for the last couple months. I've only been able to dig in and enjoy really some Moon Knight issues just to stay up with the podcast. But I'm fortunate my barber has an extensive collection of graphic novels and collected series. Yeah, wow. So I whenever I go and get my hair cut, I've been checking out a few different few different books, and most recently I've been enjoying Jeff Lemire's Descender.
Oh, I've always wanted to read that. The sci-fi.
Yeah. It's really cool. This last week, I got my ears lowered a little bit, and I finished the first trade, and I might put that on my Christmas list because it's really, really cool.
Okay, I'm gonna have to follow suit then. You've convinced me just from that. Those few sentences alone. So I had to kind of snicker a little then when you mentioned your barber had them. Tommy, are you returning to your barber a bit more frequently than usual? Is your hair becoming shorter and shorter? Or?
Yeah, just so I can read some comics.
Yeah, exactly. Just an excuse.
Actually, no, I'm on the extended 2-month plan when I get 30 minutes to myself to go get my hair cut. But but before that, he has. huge collections of Swamp Thing, Saga. So it's really a lot of fun because you'll get little kids in there waiting for their dads to get their hair cut after school, and they kind of look at the shelf and they don't know where to start. And so I pick out a couple books and say, check this out and see how you like it. So it's been a lot of fun to interact with other people in the shop and talk comics. So
that's really cool. You got me a little worried there when you said, the little kids have access to it. I mean, you mentioned Saga as well. Hopefully none of them have opened it up at some. Yeah, that's on the upper shelf. Kids good.
Can't reach that.
Right next to the lolly jar. Yeah, fair enough.
Right.
Yeah, cool, great. Look, I've got Eve's parents are over here for Christmas and New Year's. They've come over from the Netherlands, which is always a long journey, but it's also always awesome to have them here. So a little shout out to Ben and Els. I don't think they listened, but they saw me recording last episode, and they kind of they nodded their head and they raised their thumbs and go, "Good on you." I was like, "Yeah, cool, thanks." Just a hobby. So they're over here, but yeah, nothing like you. Hopefully vegging and catching up on comics as well. So behind on the current list. So yeah, that should be pretty good. Speaking of which, Tommy, before we crack into anything Moon Knighty, unless there is, of course, something that you're reading Moon Knighty, apart from Descender, what are your top three hits then? That you're currently reading?
Well, I picked up the new Batman series, the Black Label. But I missed out on I missed out on the first issue, and so I was asking around at Tardy's at my local shop. Do I actually have to read that? And everybody said, not really. I mean, issue 1 is going for $50, $60, $75 on eBay.
Yes.
So, and I guess most of what happens in issue 1 is pretty much explained in the first couple pages of the second issue. So, but again, a lot of what I've been picking up, Multiple Man just wrapped up last month.
Yeah. Oh, okay, excellent, good. Yeah, did you enjoy that or?
See, like I said, I only read the first issue, and so I have heaps and stacks of books that I'm hoping to get through.
Okay.
But I have been at least checking out some old Zelda manga.
Oh.
Like the Legend of Zelda.
Yes, the Nintendo game.
Yeah, so just books that I've picked up over the last couple years, and so I keep a book in my backpack, so whenever I have some extra time, I might check that out.
Yeah.
But otherwise, really, Ray, I am so behind. It's just been it's been a busy last couple months, and so I'm looking forward to jumping in and just enjoying all the books that I've picked up every Wednesday.
Yeah, just binging big time, eh? I can't wait as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like I'm as far behind as you. Like, I think I'm just like about a good month probably behind. But yeah, the pile does stack up, and yeah, I'm with you. I can't wait to be able to just set some time down, over the break, the holidays, and yeah, just get into it. So, yeah, brilliant. I was about to say, timestamp that, Loonies. That was 7 minutes. 7 minutes it was that we had that one Batman reference. So Tommy used his card early. Well done, Tommy. Well done.
yeah, that's right. That's the only reference.
Yeah, that's it. The only reference. Righto. Well, I mean, same with you. I haven't been reading much lately. I'm still doing. Man, I feel like I keep on saying this every time on the episode. I'm still doing Werewolf by Night. Still doing Ant-Man, the Epic Collection. Reading Namor Visionaries, Volume 2 by was it John Byrne? That's really good, very 90s-esque, pretty cool Namor stuff. But yeah, a lot of current comics like Uncanny X-Men to catch up on. So yeah.
No Superman?
The other Connor L is always on my case, saying, Ray, have you read the issue yet? And I said, sorry, dude, I haven't, not yet. I will get to it. He's asked me today, and I said, look, I've got 6 issues of Moon Knight to read. So no, I've got Superman 6, I think, by Bendis. I've got that in the wings. I did buy All Star Superman by is it Grant Morrison and Quietly Frank Whiteley, which apparently is really good. I bought from a recommendation from Dustin Coldcase Kurtz, and I kind of grimaced because we've had our reference already, but he got me onto another book by the man Bat. So, I got Nightfall Volume 2, so that's pretty good. I haven't read it yet, but
little Chuck Dixon.
Old Chuck Dixon, yeah. There's a Moon Knight connection there as well. So, so Superman is in the wings for sure.
Dave. Well, actually, it wasn't Stu. I think it was just Dave from Signal of Doom, but he just had Chuck Dixon on last weekend.
Yes, he did. Have you heard?
Interview.
Did you listen to it?
Yeah, I did. I love Chuck Dixon because Batman Nightfall were some of my first comics. My brother had them, and I didn't really care about who the author was when I was in grade school. But when I got back into comics in my adult life, going back to those comics and taking a look at the author, but Dixon's Nightfall led me to read some of his other work, and so I know that Dave is a really big Chuck Dixon fan. So it was fun because when Signal of Doom started a couple years ago, one of their first few episodes, I think Dave was actually interviewing Chuck Dixon, and so that was what really got me to continue listening to Signal of Doom.
Right. Okay. Because you're quite popular in Signal of Doom. They do cite a lot of Tommy references over there as well.
Yeah, I talk to Dave once in a while on Facebook, and I think the dynamic between Dave and Stu is hilarious, and
it is absolutely.
I love the trash talking that Stu gives Dave. I just think it's hilarious.
It is absolutely. Stu really does sound pissed off at times. I know they're the best of. I know they're the best of friends, so you can do that sort of stuff. But it's kind of listening to it. It's almost voyeuristic, but it is good fun. Yeah, definitely. Signal of Doom, so shout out to Dave and Stu doing great work over there. Those guys are powering on. Dave has a privilege, as does Chuck, of knowing Dave through their same editor, I think, or agent. They're both writers, so Dave has the pleasure of knowing Chuck on that level as well, which is pretty cool. Rightio. Well, before we head into as I mentioned, we are doing an arc review, The Scarlet Redemption, a huge one from Mark Spector Moon Knight. Before we get into that, just quickly, a bit of white noise, only a couple of things. First thing was I'd like to shout out again Delita, our favourite band, suppliers of music for Into the Night, eternally grateful from our temple. And anyway, Delita just played. I wanted to shout them out beforehand, but they played Saturday night. So when you hear this will most likely come out Sunday or early Monday for you, listeners. But Delita have played at the 331 Club, alongside Witch Watch and the Future Eaters. So any loonies that went along to catch Delita, just drop a line into the group or on the page. It'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on Delita. A massively talented and an awesome band. I'm not sure if you've had time to listen to some of their music, Tommy, but doing great stuff. And Noel is such a nice and a dedicated loony as well. Yeah,
the music has added a cool new dynamic to the show too. So thank you.
Yeah, and I mean the massive impetus was to have everything kind of, so to speak, homegrown. For Into the Night, so very proud to have a loony supplying the music, and and a different dynamic, as you say. It's really exciting. Anyway, Tommy, I know you and I, we are on a little bit of a tight schedule, so why don't we just take a quick short break and let's rip straight into this.
Hi, this is Chris.
And this is Brian.
And we are the hosts of Inner Demons, the Ghost Rider podcast.
And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcast apps for all your Ghost Rider needs.
Right on.
Yes, welcome back, Loony listeners. That was just a message from one of our fellow collective members. Just a reminder, you can catch any of the collective members. We are a consortium of such of podcasters like-minded. Just check out hashtag the collective net on Twitter, and it should lead you towards all the collective members who do comic-based character podcasts or pop culture podcasts. They're really good. So the likes of Defenders TV Podcast, Inner Demons, you have Sons of the Dragon, Immortal Iron Fist. We Have a Hulk, who have just recorded their 100th episode. Fantastic work, guys. And also the likes of Capes and Lunatics. They're countless. So check them out. They're really good shows as well. Anyway, Tommy, we got my people to speak to your people, and you are here, and we are looking at an Over the Moon arc review. Would you kindly be able to tell us the credits for this? There are a fair few issues here, 6 issues, yeah?
Yes, yeah, but pretty much the same creative team across the 6. So Mark Spector Moon Knight, issues 26 through 31, the Scarlet Redemption arc, was written by JM De Matteis, artists Garney and Tom Palmer, colors by Christie Scheele, lettered by Ken Lopez, and edited by Danny Fingeroth.
Yeah, and as you said, pretty consistent throughout the 6-issue run. Technically, it's a 5-parter with an epilogue at the end, issue 31, which we'll raise, of course. Available. This is a tricky one, Loonies. Trade reprints, they're not available anywhere really that I know of. I've checked Comixology as well. Marvel Unlimited don't have them as well. You can really only catch them on single issue, which I'm assuming you're reading, Tommy?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, when I got back into comics and when I started collecting Moon Knight, and going back to the Mark Spector Moon Knights, I actually found issues 26 through 31, but this full arc, to be some of the easiest issues to find.
Okay.
At least in my market, which, as we discuss, I kind of feel surprising because I really enjoyed the 6 issues. So.
I mean, right off the bat, I'll say it now. When I did pick these up back in 1991, because I did as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed teenager, picked them up. I didn't enjoy them as much as the other stuff that was coming out around that time. Look, I was a big X-Men fan, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, New Mutants, all that sort of stuff. I was really into the heavy action, and this is more cerebral. I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, Tommy. It's JM De Matteis has a knack of really writing these really, it's along the lines of Doug Mensch. It's very kind of poetic and lyrical, and very much so in this arc. So I didn't really enjoy it that much back then. Having said that, and I think I mentioned it in the Loony Bin, I've read it a few times since, and the last couple of days, I think it's been my 4th or 5th reread of it, over the years, of course, not concurrently, not consecutively, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it as well. So it's I can't wait to get into it. It's definitely worth a read straight off the bat anyway. Okay, Tommy, I'm going to put this to you. We have not rehearsed this at all. So for listeners out there who haven't heard us, what we usually do is we give a sliver, which is a very brief synopsis of the whole arc. We sometimes do it just for a single issue. And that will be followed by a discussion and a moon rating out of the highly convoluted ITK moon rating system. But, Tommy, unrehearsed, the sliver, I will give you the option. I have a little synopsis here from courtesy of the Comic Vine. Or, if you're happy to, you can freestyle it, Tommy, and give us a sliver in your own words if you want.
Yeah, I think I'll try my own.
Yeah,
see how.
Yeah, I was hoping you would.
See how well I can remember these issues.
Okay, so Tommy, please deliver us the sliver.
So in a couple sentences. So, all right. Stained Glass Scarlet is back on the streets of New York. She's causing havoc, firebombing the city. Only Moon Knight can stop her. and somehow they have this new spiritual bond that brings them together, ties them together, and Moon Knight has to find a way to either sever that bond or actually redeem Stained Glass Scarlet.
Yeah. Very succinct, Tommy. I reckon that pretty much ties it up with a neat, beautiful bow. Beautiful, festive bow. Very good, yeah. I think that pretty much sums it up. It's especially this bond, this spiritual bond. And hang on, let's just springboard off that into our discussion. Tommy, they've always had this almost psychic bond between the two. It's never really explained, and it's very much explored in this arc by De Matteis. What did you make of it? Were you uneasy with it at all, or were you seeking explanation, or did you just roll with it?
Well, as a Moon Knight fan, I like weird comics, and I think that, for a lot of Mark Spector Moon Knight, especially several of the issues that just precede this run, Scarlet Redemption, the trial of Mark Spector, where it's Bushman, right? Where Mark is captured by Bushman and he's forced to, confront demons of his past, and standard 90s action comics. I really enjoyed these 6 issues, even the epilogue, because of that the spirituality, the references to religion, and also this metaphysical bond, or however you would describe it, that the two share. So I think that definitely once you get into issue 29 and 30, which are part 4 and part 5, there starts to be a little bit more exploration of that bond between Stained Glass Scarlet and Mark. Maybe Moon Knight, but I think Stained Glass Scarlet refers to him as Mark sometimes. But again, it's still kind of nebulous. It's all kind of based in dreams and visions that Scarlet has had and Mark has had in the past. So I mean the explanation isn't fully there, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Look, I think initially back in the 90s, I was a bit perplexed by this thing that wasn't. You'd really have to get rid of your logical kind of mind, I guess, because to me it's never really explained. And we've done the earlier issues as well with Stained Glass Scarlet. She has mentioned that there is this ESP or this bond that they have. It's hard to tell how that's come about. Actually, I'm jumping to what I think it was in part 4 or 5, Tommy, where they start referencing Native American. Like, I found that a little weird. Like, I'm gonna jump into something that's, look, I totally love the arc. Don't get me wrong. I really do love it.
It's part 5, I think.
Part 5, yeah. That was the first thing that really irked me. I really did love the religious aspects to it. I thought JM De Matteis handled it really well, and I love this idea of Moon Knight as the angel of mercy. And of course, Stained Glass Scarlet, coming from a religious background, has associated him as some sort of savior / executioner for her redemption. But it goes into this Native American spirituality in part 5. I found that a little out of left field. Am I missing something here, Tommy?
Yeah, no, for sure. This isn't, if readers or listeners are taking a look at their issues, it is part 5, so that's issue 30, and it's in the first couple pages. So after the exposition at the beginning, where there's news reports of Stained Glass Scarlet's firebombing and how it's continuing, 6 people have died, it goes into these expository expository narration from Stained Glass Scarlet as we are looking over these panels of a priest and a priestess. At least that's how Stained Glass Scarlet refers to them. But they're stereotyped American Indians, that are dancing around a fire. They're topless. They have feathers in their cap. They have braids, and they're doing performing some ritual around this bonfire. And then the priest, the male, throws himself into the fire, but the priestess is unable to follow through. And that kind of is the explanation for Stained Glass Scarlet, how she's like creating all of these fires throughout the city, but she can't find the way to throw herself into the fire. She wants to be cleansed and purified through the fire. So I did find that was a little strange, just because I had no recollection of Stained Glass Scarlet having any affiliation to
me too.
American Indian, the diverse American Indian cultures or First Nations cultures. And so it seemed that, Stained Glass Scarlet, she's Catholic, right?
Yes.
And, there's a lot of similarities between Stained Glass Scarlet and Daredevil. But then suddenly we come to this different culture, and it did kind of seem like De Matteis was using this stereotyped vision of what American Indians are. So
I felt
kind of weird.
Yeah, I felt he may have, and this is probably for me the weakest point out of the whole arc. I mean, and out of 6 issues, that's pretty good if there's only just kind of one. I think he veered away. I don't know whether he was trying a bit too much. He may have overplayed it with this whole spirit, because if, as you mentioned with the fire, which rightly so, as you said, was integral in that American Indian kind of dance that they did around the bonfire, I took it that her fires that she was starting stemmed from her history, which we do get to see. I think it's part 4, is it, Tommy? The origin of Stained Glass Scarlet and her abusive father. And she ends up, and so she ends up, he gets injured, he breaks his leg, and as a young girl, she kind of leaves a cigarette out in the hospital bed or something, and she actually basically burns him to death, as well as who knows how many others in the hospital. So I took that connection with her, I don't know, arsonist tendencies to come from that. I didn't feel it needed, that Indian. I thought there was enough spirituality with her Catholic, background. But anyway, having said
the references, the references to hellfire too. Within that tradition of sinners go to hell and they burn. And then I think it's in part 5. MARC even kind of calls out, if there is a hell, I would have been there a long time ago, because I'm so bad. I've murdered people, and I'm, trying to redeem myself. Yeah. Praise Khonshu.
I think he even calls out as well, or his thoughts call out. He's kind of judging Stained Glass Scarlet, but he could well have killed more people than she has. So he's got just as much red on his ledger, to use a terminology similar to her, more than hers. So I did love the spirituality and the parallels with Stained Glass Scarlet and Marlene. That popped up every so often as well. You see, I posted it in one of the Loony Bins, in the Loony Bin as well. I loved how De Matteis and Ron Garney use them to parallel, I guess the faith in Khonshu, as well as the faith in in God and in Christ. You see that with, but it's so funny because it's kind of turned around. Like Stained Glass Scarlet is the malevolent one. Although I don't know, would you paint her as sympathetic, or did you find her as an out and out villain, Tommy?
I didn't see her as a villain in the series. I wouldn't say that I necessarily sympathized with her, and I think part of that just comes with the presentation of her character. She's a very pathetic character in the sense, not in the sense that like, oh, this is trash, but I think what I mean is that I don't want to say that I sympathize with her, but it's kind of like you feel sorry for her.
Mm. You do.
If those can be two different ways of looking at it, I'm trying to disassociate sympathy from that you feel sorry for them.
Oh, okay.
But there's like a saying. There's a saying in the United States. When people say "bless your heart," really what they mean is, oh, you poor idiot, you know? And that's kind of how I feel about Stained Glass Scarlet. And I think part of me hates to say that, because especially recognizing Moon Knight and Mark Spector, while his DID is not necessarily explored within this series, the 60-issue series, it's more of just like, hey, I'm crazy, and I have to deal with that. Clearly, Stained Glass Scarlet is dealing with some type of illness, whether that's clinical depression or schizophrenia or whatever it happens to be, that stems from abuse from her childhood. That's very present, and we have to admit that. But just the way that her character ended up at the very end, with her death, or presumed death, right? Because she comes back.
She does, yeah.
In that 4-issue series that we reviewed earlier this year, actually, from the late 90s. Resurrection War? Yeah, it's more, she comes back more as a vision, I think.
Even then it's vague, I think. But yeah, you're right, it's a vision, but she's very much, anyway, she definitely has her own thoughts and seems to have some sort of sentience, but yeah.
So I kind of felt like her character was stronger in the first 3 issues, and then in the last 2 issues, and that's kind of, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, where the whole spiritual aspect of these several books starts to get a bit nebulous, and kind of, where is this going? Because Ray, as you mentioned, I would agree that the explanation in part 3, or is it part 4?
Part 4, yeah.
Where we see the her murdering her father by way of the cigarette in the hospital bed. That to me that's where you stop with her character. That's who she is. It's her adult self stems from the abuse she experienced, but also the choices she made as a child, and then she's trying to redeem herself from that. She believes that she can find that through Moon Knight, but then once we get into part 5, she's kind of all over the place. So
yeah, and it seems like JM De Matteis as well has he's retconned her in a sense that when we did first see her in the Doug Mensch Volume 1 run, and as she's come along, it was very much, it seemed like her trigger was when she killed her own son, right? Mad Dog Fascinera. And to an extent, the abusive relationship between her and her husband, Vincent, is it? I think it's Vincent. I can't remember. Anyway, Victor. So it seemed like James De Matteis thought, okay, that's bad enough, but in order to I guess, justify the actions that she's carrying out on New York City, it requires a bit more explanation into her past. So that's why I think we get a bit of an origin to her, like really well done and in a very succinct way. But because we haven't heard that before about her childhood, her upbringing, and this thing about her father being very religious as well. So that explains why she became a nun. Was she a nun? Okay. I think. Oh, I can't remember now. I can't remember, Tommy, if she was a nun before or after she it would have been before she killed her son. But anyway, so her father was very religious, and he had this abusive relationship with her. And it even, you can take it for what it is as well. It seems rather abusive. I don't know whether it's just physical, but it could be obviously mental and emotional as well. So that does carry.
Well, I think those are probably tied too.
Yeah.
If you're experiencing physical abuse, I think that the emotional or psychological is tied to that.
Well, I was heading towards the thing. It was, I don't know, maybe it's just me thinking too much into it, but he mentions the dad about the mum no longer being there, and the way he treats Scarlet. I didn't know whether there was almost an incestuous, sexual abuse happening there, but you're left to leave it. You're left to make of it what you will. But it's a pretty heavy childhood that she's had, enough to obviously kill her own father when he's incapacitated. So so very heavy. So I think she's been retconned quite well into this, and I think that it definitely I guess explains a bit more of her motives. So we get a bit more of a fleshing out of Stained Glass Scarlet here as well. I wanted to also then discuss with you, Tommy, just another point of your thoughts on, and I'm leaning towards issue part 3, which is a fantastic issue about Moon Knight. It's a bit more of an enriching, again, of his history, considering it's Mark Spector Moon Knight, the title. But what we get is Scarlet stabbing Moon Knight when they finally meet in the early issues. Were you shocked by that reveal towards the end, I guess?
I don't think I was shocked. I mean, because Stained Glass Scarlet is clearly the villain. And she, in the first 2 issues, there's some heavy use of a knife by way of Stained Glass Scarlet, so I figured, of course, when they meet, this is a 5-6 issue run, she's gonna cut Mark. But the last few issues, or last few panels of issue 2, though, where she actually stabs him, are really cool. There's no dialogue, and it's this connection between Mark and Scarlet, and then she pulls the knife, and then there's these really, really cool vertical panels that play out on the first 2/3 of the second to last page of the comic, where Mark is then plunging into the water, which in a moment I really want to discuss the cover art and the first page
of course.
art too. So I wasn't shocked by that character choice. Stained Glass Scarlet has to harm Mark in some way. I mean, she's the villain. But what I would say is that in the first several pages of issue 3, I just love the way that De Matteis writes these few pages.
Oh, yeah.
The art is curated.
Absolutely.
If listeners have read the most recent Miracle Man series, many of those series use this 9-panel design in the first few pages of the issues, and then the final pages, so in the exposition, and then the end of the comic. And that's what De Matteis and his creative team do with the issue 3, and so it's just so cool. It's a great way to show a time lapse, but it's also a great way to slow time down. And that's where we see Mark having been stabbed on top of, maybe the Brooklyn Bridge, experiencing what happens after, and then plunging into, the river, whichever river that is. But, so I wasn't surprised by that choice. She carries a crossbow around, right? I mean, Stained Glass Scarlet is cool. I think she is a really cool character. Like, whereas Daredevil has Typhoid Mary.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Scarlet is Moon Knight's Typhoid Mary.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good comparison, actually, and there is a very similar relationship. Someone mentioned on the Facebook group again, it's similar to another hero's relationship with a villain called Catwoman. But I think I like the Daredevil Typhoid Mary comparison.
I've never heard of her.
But look, what I was getting at as well, Tommy, is that it is a tenuous relationship, and I think up until that point as well, I think when I first read this, I was taken aback a little, because up until that point, Stained Glass Scarlet has been talking of Moon Knight as her savior, as her angel of mercy. So I was expecting initially that she would come to him, and since sometimes they do work, together, alongside each other, and for her to rely on him so much, it just surprised me that she then stabs him and gets rid of him. And she mentions later on as well, I wanted to be saved, but she kind of almost gave up on herself. She said, but I'm damned anyway, so stuff that option. And that's why she kind of stabbed him. It is a bit of a strange one, because she does lead the reader to believing that, I mean, she draws Moon Knight out with Crawley at the beginning, right? So she blows up Jenna's diner with that one crossbow. arrow just strategically shot into the stove. Somehow that blows up the whole diner. And she does it actually again with the moon copter.
It's explained that that's an incendiary bolt.
Oh,
so
okay, right.
It was tipped with an explosive or something.
Oh,
so she
okay.
Probably, she planned out and hit the gas line. Or something
okay. Because I found that a little funny. And then we see, I think, at the end of issue 2, with again one arrow, she blows up the whole moon copter. But that could be the same thing, can't it? I guess. Yeah, but anyway, so she draws out Crawley, and she actually, and this is another point I really wanted to talk about. The supporting characters, De Matteis uses really well. So we get to see a bit of Frenchie that's kind of fleshed out a bit. Crawley is actually used
in a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is before Frenchie was rewritten.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So this is one of the few instances you see him in a relationship. But but you see Frenchie, she gets him as well. She actually captures him, all to draw Moon Knight out. But yeah, I guess I was under the pretext that it was because she wanted to meet him, to be with him, because he's the Angel of Mercy. But she ends up stabbing him, which is quite. I found initially quite shocking. Hindsight is a good thing, obviously.
Well, I think that so. Speaking to hindsight and looking at the entire arc, where by the end she, really is craving Moon Knight to redeem her, as she played, and as we mentioned before with the American Indian vision scene, and having lived a past life, and these two are connected, maybe having lived past lives together, of being the priest and the priestess. I guess I saw that more as in the first 2 issues. Scarlet sees that she needs to kill Moon Knight in order to be cleansed, and healed. Right. But then after Moon Knight presumably dies, because that's something that I didn't really like about these issues. This idea that Moon Knight dies again, and then Khonshu rescues him again, and then he's no longer the harbinger of vengeance, but now of mercy and rescuing people.
Yeah, that's right.
We see in the epilogue.
Yes, good point.
I saw not issue 3, issue 28, but part 3 as the turning point, where when Moon Knight comes back, Scarlet then has like a complication added, where she then needs to deal with the fact that MARC isn't actually dead, and then that propels her character to take the steps that she does. So I didn't see it as like Scarlet from issue 26 through issue 30 had a plan that everything that she did and basically the action of every issue is going to play out the way that it does. I saw it more as she had a plan in 26 and 27. She kills Moon Knight at the end of 27. He drowns, or he's poisoned, from the knife wound, however that works. But then when he comes back, she then has to deal with the fact that Moon Knight is back, and then she still sees him as her angel of mercy, her priest. So I saw it more as just like this was like a part 1 and part 2 for Stained Glass Scarlet.
Yeah. Oh, look, I totally agree as well. Her actions seem quite whimsical, it seems to me. And her mental state obviously precludes that as well. She bounces from here and there. Look, she is, for all intents, she does have some sort of illness. So yeah, I think everything that we've just mentioned and what you've just said as well, Tommy. I think it's De Matteis has done a great job in depicting Stained Glass Scarlet. He actually has given us so much more depth and empathy from the readers, that she really comes into her own in this. And it's, all the more, I guess, tragic at the end when she does kind of meet her demise. Look, Tommy, also as well, I wanted to, just before we get in, I wanted to get into part 3, but you mentioned the covers. Let's talk about the covers.
Yeah, I was scrounging around to see if who actually crafted the covers and who has the art credit for these, and I had some difficulty determining that, but I love these.
They are fantastic.
When I purchased these, I thought, wow, and I think I bought these, maybe 4 years ago, or within a span of a few months, because I bought them as singles. and I just thought, wow, these look really cool. And the covers, as usual, usually don't match up with the art that's inside, which I would still compliment. I really enjoyed the art, just panel by panel. But the covers are so cool. So for readers, I would truly encourage you, if you haven't read these issues before, is to look each of these up online as you are listening now to the podcast and just check them out. It's a really, really cool technique where there's a core design and a core cover, a lot of Egyptian spiritual design, hieroglyphics are used, but ritualistic designs that are included. But then superimposed on top of that core cover design for each of the issues is almost like an etching. It's almost as if the artist took a pastel knife and scratched away at the surface to reveal these other designs. And so the superimposition of these kind of ritualistic designs are almost like runes. I mean, there's some hieroglyphs, and like part 3, for example, issue 28 has, I don't know if that's the
like
Osiris,
bird, or
but it's this Egyptian bird. But just really, and there's a scarab beetle, I think, on part 4. And then finally with part 5, you have this etching of Moon Knight over maybe the Brooklyn Bridge. And it's that extra layer to the covers is so cool. And I know it's super 90s and all the pastel colors are kind of actually kind of coming back into vogue.
Yeah, they are.
Now in the 2010s and almost 2020s now, but just really, really cool covers. And I know that MARC SPECTOR Moon Knight, the run as a whole, the 60 issues, kind of gets knocked as being trash, and it throws out Mark's illness, and it just focuses on Mark rather than his other identities. But these are like mountable worthy. I want to slab these and put these on my wall. They just look so cool with each other.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, look, absolutely as well. There are like a few gems, hidden gems in the MARC SPECTOR Moon Knight run. Rightly, as you say, Tommy, it is kind of like amusingly looked at as the 90s run, but there are some really good arcs, exactly like this one as well. For me, a lot of the earlier ones in the run, so actually a lot of Chuck Dixon earlier on, and there was one with Ghost Rider I really loved as well. That was written by Howard Mackey, which we reviewed as well. But yeah, these covers, you could really, I'd go even one step further, Tommy, and say you can strip away all the comic book format, and these are poster worthy, right? You could really just
absolutely
frame these. I love these ones. My favorite would be it's hard to say, but my favorite would be either the first one or or the second or fifth one. They're all of them are really good, and you can just have them. You'd be quite proud to have them on your wall as a work of art. Really fantastic stuff.
That first one is so cool.
The first one is the colors are great. I know.
Something I really love about the MARC SPECTOR Moon Knight series is that with the covers especially, often Moon Knight is depicted with his eyes. When Mark is in his Moon Knight costume, the eyes are askew and they're asymmetrical, and that first cover really shows that where his cowl and his cloak or his cape are just draping over him, and it's not that clean look that we have from 2005, 2006 on. Even through the most recent series, which has its place and is really cool. It's the last series, the Max Bemis series was, and Burroughs was depicted him in a really cool way. But issue 26 shows Moon Knight as in this like prostrate position, where he is almost ready to strike out or ready to receive Khonshu's blessing. On his knees, and it's really, really cool.
It is very, very good indeed. And also as well, just further to what you mentioned, like these 5 covers, I'm not counting the epilogue because the epilogue is more standard. I think MARC Spectre Moon Knight cover, but these 5 covers by Bill Sienkiewicz, man, they do stand out. If you put all the covers out for MARC Spectre Moon Knight, these ones really do stand out. All the others, are great and are fantastic in their own right, but they're a lot more regular than what you'd expect. These really, I don't know, Bill Sienkiewicz must have obviously had a reputation because he was allowed a bit of leeway.
So it is Bill Sienkiewicz.
I think it is. Yeah. I think.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
his signature, where he marked each painting. It's so subtle. I'm just seeing it now.
Yeah. Oh, yep. There it is. Yep. In issue the first issue 26. It's very subtle.
Yeah, 1990.
Yeah. It looks like almost like a bit of just a crack in the wall. But yeah.
And oh my god, that man is a master. He is unbelievable.
He must have obviously had a reputation where Marvel said, "Okay, free reign, go for it, Bill, because you are a true artist." Because you don't see anything like this in the rest of the run. It's really, really good. And also you mentioned, Tommy, the first pages. I think the first pages probably warrant to mention.
Yeah, those are really cool. So the for listeners, the first page, the title page of each issue, shares a similar design across the first 5 issues, where there's typically water involved, fire involved, at times windows, like the stained glass windows, and they depict, depending, either Scarlet ascending or descending, or in a position where she seems to be suffering, with her hands kind of reaching out from the loam or the water, whatever it happens to be. Or MARC or Moon Knight in the exact same position, where either Moon Knight is ascending, descending, or reaching up from below. And so it's really, really cool. But what De Matteis does is he also provides all these allusions to other... I guess they're less allusions and more just direct quotations from...
Oh, they're really good. Yeah.
Classic works. He's got some Percy Bysshe Shelley in there, who wrote Ozymandias, for Breaking Bad fans, William Blake,
yeah. Which Scarlet
Gospel of John,
Scarlet and Moon Knight reference in the story themselves. Yep. William Blake. I mean, sorry, they talk about Blake in the issue, which is really good.
Right. And each of those references, talk a little bit about resurrection to a certain degree, or it's not resurrection. I'm sorry, I'm thinking Resurrection War, but redemption. So being cleansed, which has to do a lot with this cleansing by fire, this purification by fire, which runs throughout the arc. So just, I don't know, those little touches by De Matteis really, I mean, for a 90s comic, where we're all wearing little packs on our belts and our wrists. This really stands out as
absolutely
worthy of a contemporary audience, I feel.
Not taking anything away from the others during the 90s, but this does seem like a really mature, just on a different level kind of arc, as opposed to some of the more tried and true stories that you see. Again, not taking nothing away from the other writers there, and they're real good in their own right, but JM De Matteis, having read this, and have you read Craven's Last Hunt as well? So there's a particular style to him, and it's really good. I think he just kind of goes against the grain a little with conventional comic writing, and I think it's well suited with Moon Knight and Scarlet, Stained Glass Scarlet here. I think he's really found his groove with Scarlet Fascinera. Look, Tommy, I'm just mindful of the time as well. Is there any other main big theme that you'd like to cover for this arc before we get into our rating?
I don't think so necessarily. Just that the art within each of the issues is I felt quite excellent. It really made reading these quite a pleasure. The cover art, the design, and Stained Glass Scarlet, for the most part, is treated as a really interesting character. I mean, she kind of fades out in part 5 and doesn't have the best end.
No, not at all.
And and of course she's tragic. You just have to deal with the fact that she's never going to be truly redeemed, I suppose. And perhaps I would love to see her come back in future Moon Knight series. But part 3, though, just very quickly, we mentioned this before, but briefly explores Mark's relationship with his father.
That's a massive thing. Yeah.
And his own religious background, which in the final issue, well, not the epilogue, I'm sorry, which honestly, listeners, you do not have to read the epilogue.
No, not really.
It's a series of vignettes where Moon Knight decides to go on a new path where he's not going to be the bringer of vengeance, but he's going to help people out. I mean, it's good, but
it's not essential. Yeah.
But in part 5, Mark tells Marlene that, or actually no, it's before Mark has his rendezvous with Marlene. He says a prayer for Stained Glass Scarlet, which I thought was really interesting because we typically see Mark as this individual that has eschewed God and does not have a relationship with religion, and that was brought about because of his father. And then we saw in the most recent series from Bemis with Uncle Ernst all the complications that Mark has with Judaism, but also just with religion and faith, especially with Khonshu. So I thought that was a really interesting read, and I would say that issue 3 is an essential read for a Moon Knight fan.
Absolutely.
When exploring Mark's spirituality and his background in religion and faith. Oh
no, absolutely. And I think the good thing is that we will get to issue by issue eventually as well. So bear in mind this is an arc review, and Tommy, you raise a massive point with issue 3 being a very important issue, and De Matteis does very well in succinctly capping off relationships between Mark and his father, Mark and Khonshu, even Mark and Randall, his bigger brother. So you get that masterly.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing to note.
Yeah, very masterly.
Randall's the older brother.
Yes.
Whereas in at least the last several series or volumes, Randall's been the younger.
Yeah. So there's been a discrepancy there, but they play off the relationships there, which we see in the Bemis run later on. A bit more, and yeah, it is the Bemis run, isn't it? Or the Lemire run. Oh my god, I can't remember. But there is an exploration of Randall and Mark's. It's actually in Mark Spector Moon Knight a bit later on. Blood Brothers is the arc. I believe it's later on in the run. But anyway, so very succinctly done. Issue 3 is part 3 is essential. So yeah, Loonies, if anything, if you can find part 3, it is really good, and not much is given throughout the whole run of Mark Spector Moon Knight on Mark's kind of past and relationships with his dad and his relatives. So De Matteis again really kind of pushing the boundaries in this run at least. Look, Tommy, just another couple of little notes here before we get into our Moon ratings. Marlene, she seems that she can't get out of bed. Every time we see her, she's in bed and in lingerie. So, De Matteis...
Yeah, welcome to the 90s. But she is Mark's pilot.
She is, and she does save him. She's the one that pulls him out of the water. So, again, she is Mark's savior. And she does have an integral part in that she is kind of almost the foil, so to speak, to Stained Glass Scarlet. You see a lot of parallels between her. When she actually looks towards Khonshu, Stained Glass Scarlet looks towards the altar. There's a lot of visual comparisons between the two. And finally, all I was about to say was I did love the action. There was enough street level action here. De Matteis is mindful of not only having it such a character focused thing, and he does give us a lot of Moon Knight busting some criminals on the street. So I loved seeing that as well, which we need more of. I felt a little shortchanged in the Bemis run. Give us more Mark Spector or Moon Knight just kicking ass, I say.
Yeah, especially with these last few issues, and the epilogue.
The epilogue
too,
he
where
does.
Mark is just
the epilogue he does it a lot.
It's throwing down.
Yeah,
it reminded me of the Ellis run.
Yeah, right.
And
yes.
just how I would agree with the last 12 issues. It was more cerebral. It was more an exploration of character as opposed to Mark just beating up baddies. And very quickly too, did you notice that in the epilogue when Moon Knight goes to Little Italy, and I'm blanking on the character's name, but where Moon Knight throws down in that Italian restaurant,
Gioviti, is it? Yeah.
He uses a crescent dart, but then he also throws out this like Egyptian
boomerang,
and then this axe
that
has these Egyptian hieroglyphs on it.
Yes,
like that's what I want to see. Do you recall in the Bemis run? I want to say it's like 195, but it was the first collective issue where Moon Knight has the sword belt.
Yeah, that's what we need to see more of.
Yeah, that's the remember. My son Remy asked Max about
right.
why does Moon Knight have a sword belt or whatever. But like these cool little gadgets, I love that. Not to draw a connection to somebody that maybe knows a woman named Kat.
But exactly right. It does stick out to like kids and to fans as well. We need more of these gadgets. We need more of these. I my eyes opened up when that boomerang came. It's like, yes, this is a little callback to it. The Fist of Khonshu. So, really enjoyable stuff. Okay, Tommy, we better wrap up now. Just because we've got one Moony missive I want to get through as well. But Moon ratings. So, in our highly convoluted system, Tommy, what would you give the whole arc? We're talking about as a whole. 26 to 31, the Scarlet Redemption.
Well, I'd say for this is the arc. I think is an essential read for a Moon Knight fan.
Agreed.
But otherwise, I would probably give this like a 3/4 moon.
3/4 moon.
I'd say that.
Yep.
So it was good, and I want to read it again, but it's not the best comics that I've read.
Okay. Yep. So 3/4 moon, that equates to obviously 3/4, 7.5 out of 10.
7.5.
7.5. Pretty decent. That is more than decent. That's a pretty impressive score. I'd go for a waxing gibbous. Tommy, I'd go in the vicinity of 8. Actually, I wouldn't go high as 9 out of 10. I'd say 8. 8 out of 10, a waxing gibbous. I really enjoyed this. As I mentioned, I enjoyed it a lot more the more times I reread it. The first time when I read it in the early 90s, I wasn't that invested in this sort of storytelling. This is really interesting to me now. There is a bit of... there are a few flat bits, like, what we mentioned with the American Indian spirituality and such, but Stained Glass Scarlet's this psychic bond with Moon Knight, which is still a little kind of sticks in my mind. Other than that, I thought it was a highly enjoyable run. I found reading these 6 issues for this episode today no trouble at all. So that's a good indication as well. So there you go, Loonies. 3/4 moon, 7.5, and an 8 out of 10. Go get yourself some copies of this. As Tommy says, they're not that hard to find or actually to spend on. So hopefully that's still the case as we speak. Before we go, Tommy, I know we're both pressed for time here, but it's been an absolute pleasure. We have one Moony missive here from our friend Josh Geronimo Johnson. Do you want to read this one out for us?
Yeah, sure, Josh. So, an avid Moon Knight fan and major contributor to our community. So, Josh, thanks for chiming in. Josh says, definitely a dark, epic tale. JM De Matteis is one of my favorite writers, and this is no exception. Stained Glass Scarlet turns out to be a quite formidable foe for Moon Knight, and the relationship between the two sort of reminds me of relationship. Lusty, but dangerous. The end of part 2, where Mooney gets stabbed and falls off a damn bridge, was quite shocking, but seeing him come back from that was pretty awesome. Those Sienkiewicz covers are trippy, but cool as well. I'd give this arc a waxing gibbous. Hey, much like you, Ray.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Josh. And I'll just explain it now. I'm going to do it in post, Tommy, but I will bleep out those 2 names that you just read out, because, as we mentioned, there is only one reference. But, Loonies, you can very much figure out who those 2 were I'll leave it up to you. But hopefully, if I get around to it, their names have been bleeped out. But thank you, Josh. Thank you so much. Wax and Gibbous, yeah, absolutely. You're same along the line along the same lines. 8 or 9 out of 10. Fantastic. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, I did find that quite shocking as well, getting stabbed and falling off, and the Sienkiewicz covers we mentioned had to be mentioned in this show. We could not. They're just spectacular. Right, then, well, I think, Loonies, we are going to have to wrap up now. Tommy, the man on the Streets Kawel, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for waking up early. There were a little technical difficulties at the beginning, but I've thoroughly enjoyed our talk. This has been a really good one to talk about. Yeah, it's my pleasure, and big surprise, technical difficulties on ITK? No, surely not. No, we're like a well-oiled machine. No, really appreciate it, Tommy. Legend, always keen to talk to you. It's just really good. So anytime, and also all the best to the family, and for the holiday break coming up as well. But I'm sure I'll see you somewhere around the traps on the ITK group or community. Indeed, and I'm sure I'll talk to you, but, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you, and thank you. Enjoy your time with your Netherlander family. Thank you very much. That's all from us, Loonies. Next phase. Look, you're going to have to check our ITK newsletter next week. It is coming up towards Christmas, so Khonshu and I are talking about a Christmas special. Could potentially be a year in review and or a discussion of Moon Knight. Moon Knight's one-shot comic Silent Night, released in January 2009 by Peter Milligan and Lawrence Campbell. But just keep your eyes out for the ITK newsletter, and we'll confirm what we'll have for our next show. Finally, as well, you can find us on email, itkmoonnight@gmail.com. Our website is intothenight.podcast.wordpress.com. We're on Facebook, a page, facebook.com/ITKMoonnight, and we have an awesome group, facebook.com/group/ITKMoonnight. We are on Twitter, @ITKMoonnight, surprisingly, and we're on Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube. Just search for Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. iTunes ratings would be very much appreciated. If you enjoyed what you've heard here, if you enjoyed Tommy's dulcet tones, please hit us up with a review. We very much appreciate it. It just helps us find other loonies out there. Finally, we're on all good podcast catches, so whatever you're listening to now, or also Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, all that jazz, we're on that. So once again, a huge thank you to Tommy, the man on the Streets Kawel. It's been an absolute pleasure. Tommy, before I ask you to maybe sign us off for tonight, finally, any Moon Knight recommendations to friends? Any stocking fillers that you might be thrusting upon friends of yours or family? Yeah, so the most recent Bemis run, several of the trades are out, and most recently over the last couple of months, but the complete collection in hardcover of Jeff Lemire's run from about 2016, or was that 2014? It came out in September, and I'd say that's about $30 in the US. So pick that up. That would be an excellent gift for anybody, even somebody that has never heard of Moon Knight. That's a great place to start. Not the best place to start, but that would be a great place to start. Beautiful art, beautiful writing, and beautiful presentation in that hardcover. Excellent. Oh, actually, I forgot as well, just before you sign us off, Tommy, also next week, Moon Knight Epic Collection Volume 3, Final Rest is out. That will complete Doug Mench's full run of Moon Knight Volume 1. That is a stocking stuffer if ever I've seen one. Go get it. Go give it to your friends. Give it to your mum. It's fantastic. Anyway, that's it from me. Tommy, what do we typically say? Yeah, so be well, everyone, and may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.